think we're live. Let's just see how this goes. I am going to make sure that y'all can see me before I dive in this time. I'm going to make sure that you can hear me before I dive in this time. Joy, I saw you just log on. Can you tell me if you can hear me, my love? That would be wonderful. And then without further ado, because I think in this new land of Substack, we're a little more asynchronous than we used to be, which I quite like actually. I'm just going to begin. I'm just going to begin, and people will come in when they come in. They'll get in where they fit in. They'll watch it when they watch it. All right. Thank you for confirming that you can hear me. Wonderful. Now, today is a new moon in Gemini. The new moon is when the moon is the darkest. There's space for intention, for calling new things in. And there's time, right? We have a whole month of lunations, dynamics, energies, powers to harness and marshal and find at our backs as we move toward that which we choose. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about time, about the concept, about time as a construct in conception. We're going to talk about timeline hopping, collapsing, jumping, this thing I'm seeing everywhere in the internet, and which is actually a real thing, but not in the way that people talk about it. And so we're going to do a little bit of cosmic myth busting, a little bit of lie detecting on the subject of timeline collapsing. And I think what you hear and it will be, we're going to talk I always talk a lot about uh, comparative linguistics, meaning the differences in language for some of these concepts across different cultures and across different languages, because different languages have really different conceptions of these metaphysical, spiritual, psychological, archetypal, manifestational physics, or physical, meaning by physics concepts. And it can be powerful for us to mine those other languages. But one of the concepts I'll bring up for you today is a concept of aletheia, which is a term from ancient Greek, which is sort of that feeling. I've heard people describe this like my chest kind of cracked open, like that feeling of shifting the field, the paradigm shifting, because someone says something to you or shares something with you, or you come into a knowing of something that is like an unconcealment, a revelation, an epiphany of something that you just know to be true in your bones and body, not even like in your frontal lobes. Okay. So, assuming everybody, okay, great. So weird. What happens randomly, Joy? Is everybody, you guys can all hear me still? I want to make sure that you can still hear me. Can someone just in the chat say, I hear you? And then I will begin. Great. Great, great, great. Okay. So, and all of what I'm sharing with you today are knowings, insights, transmissions that came to me in the process of working on my book. The last time we met, what we're doing here is we're gathering on every new moon and every full moon. We're gathering because this is a ritual time respected across the eons, literally, by women to, again, harness and marshal those universal powers and forces toward the purposes that they are feeling called and led to work toward, live into. The last time we met, I read you like a very early draft of a first chapter in the book that's probably now more like a preface, a prologue, or an introduction to the book, Right now, I'm working on this segment of the book that's about time, and I'm writing on time, right on time. And I've actually got kind of this download right now to let the writing be so fast and so furious and so messy that it's not really readable on the first pass. And in this way, I'm kind of on pace to finish the first draft of the book really rapidly. So to protect that, I'm not going to read you a draft of any section, but I'm going to share with you what's coming to me, the transmissions that have come to me, because every transmission that comes to me is really trying to come through me to you. So let's talk about time. Have you ever heard someone say, like, the time before time? In a time before time, that was a real time. There really was a real era in real human history on this planet that actually happened. That is not mythological. Okay. But to understand what I mean when I say a time before time, you have to understand that everything you've been taught about time is a hoax. It's all a hoax. It's all propaganda, guys. Everything you were taught about time. In fact, there's this word, speaking of comparative linguistics, there's a word in the German. mm, I wanna make sure I'm saying it right, so I'm just, like, confirming. Hinterder Hintergedanken. Hintergedanken. And some people translate it really simply as, like, ulterior motives or hidden motives. But if you read or study the rogue theologian Alan Watts, which I do, um, Alan Watts talked about this as this Hintergedanken. A Gedanken as like, kind of like the creepy crawlies in the back of your mind. Like that deep, dark, gnawing suspicion of something, but you don't know quite what, because that something is so dangerous and so profound and would so seismically shake the foundations of your life that not only can you not speak it to others, you can't even speak it or think it to yourself. It's that unfathomable thing. All right. And I think one of those Hintergedankens is that everything you've been taught about time is a total freaking hoax. Okay. It is a hoax that was perpetuated and propagandized on all of humanity because it helps us be a good little cog for those who need us to be good little productive, linear, efforting cogs. It helps us do what they want us to do when we feel like we're running out of time to create the output we came here to create. Okay? There is a lie about time that is being told, especially in the Western world, or basically almost all parts of the world now. And that lie is something like that time started at creation, or in your case, it started when you were born. And then when time began, so also began a race against the clock to the apocalypse, the darkness, the chaos, the uncertainty. So, like, that's the macro story. The micro story is like time began when you were born and then began a race against the clock to death. All right. This is why when we feel like uncertain about the future or afraid about the future, most of us start building things or doing things and undoing things, right? But our goal is to, like, create outcomes and outputs. This whole idea that time is linear, that it is exactly logical, that it can be compartmentalized into, years and months and weeks and days and hours and minutes, and that it is extractive, meaning we must squeeze output out of time. This is all a lie, a hoax of what I call the capitalarchy. And as Exhibit A, I'll say that the first time management planners in humanity were actually tools that were published for enslavers and the overseers who worked for them. Real talk. I'm not making this up. Look it up. The back in the day, the sort of ones, the fearful ones, who I will call the weak ones, needed to extract stuff, items, food to store or hoard. In fear, people in fear begets scarcity. In scarcity, people are looking for things. They want to hoard. They want to store food. They want to store property and label land property. They want to store natural resources, including they want to store, what now we call money, but then was wood or metals, right? Human resources, literally people, right? They wanted to extract stuff from the ones with the powers they didn't have, like the power to give life or the power of life force energy. So they created very logical and linear extractive systems, kind of like the here in Portugal, every restaurant makes a fresh squeezed orange juice and they're all kind of delectable. But so in every restaurant, you see that really simple extraction juicer, right? Cut the orange in half, stick it on there, pull the lever, something comes out. That is what the capital-archy did, right? They made a lever that pulled stuff out. So for wood and metals, they cut them and mined them and they put them into these little boxes they called containers. And then they put those containers onto trains and ships and moved them to where they wanted to move them. This is why one of my favorite thinkers on Instagram, her Instagram handle is Mumbi Poetry, says Africa is not undeveloped. Africa is not an undeveloped place. Africa was undeveloped in order to develop the West. Okay. And in some kind of the same way, women are not really in general behind, but we were mined and extracted from to develop the world of men. Now, the same thing happened with time. They needed to create a system, so they invented a mythology. When you want to, there's an amazing Nigerian poet, Okri, and he has this quote he wrote that says that I've thought about since the day I read it, like years ago. If you want to demoralize people, you tell them a demoralized story. This is a little bit what happened with humanity and time. They needed to create a system that could extract output from humans. So they invented a mythology of time and output, or time equals money. Okay. Enslaved people's time was measured, their time and their worth, dollar amount worth, was measured by how much cotton they produced. They were rewarded for more, they were punished savagely for less. They were unable to sleep or rest deeply. And this is the thing that actually is like an epigenetic wound that's showing up right now today, in people of African descent, in terms of like a multi-generational insomnia that we all just seem to think that our families don't sleep. Turns out, I know for myself recently, my doctor was like, okay, you're doing this right, you're doing this right, you're nailing this, you're nailing this. And he was like, how much are you sleeping? And I said, 5 hours a night. But I only sleep 5 hours a night. I've slept 5 hours a night for generations. My parents sleep 5 hours a night. My grandmother sleeps 5 hours a night. And he was mortified. He was like, absolutely not. He had given me something for sleep and I told him I don't take it. And he asked me why. And I said, it makes me a little nervous to sleep that deep. I am used to sleeping and knowing what everyone in every town, in every house on the street is doing. And he said, no, 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 no. Mm-mm. You deserve and need to rest deeply every day. All right. So that's a little aside, but I say that because somebody here needed to hear that. This idea, when you want to extract a resource, when you want to create a mythology of this thing equals this thing, you must track it. And that's what time management planners were. And this became a whole field called human resources, just like oil is resources, just like gold is resources, just like wood is resources. To these people, humans are resources. All right. And so the Western time myth is a myth of fear and scarcity. Again, time started at creation or your birth, race against the clock to the end. When you feel uncertain, when you feel that fear of what's coming that you can't see, you start doing stuff. And for many of us, we start building things and creating outcomes and creating outputs. For some of us, I've noticed for myself, if I get very triggered or my nervous system gets into threat mode, I start undoing things, but it's still doing. All right. We do this because actually, let me just offer to you that there is another way. There is a totally alternative cosmology of time that, again, I learned about from Mumbi poetry, but she cites many, many, many scholars over many generations in her work. I want to share with you that there is a very alternative African cosmology of time. And we see it in the Swahili words for time. In Swahili, there is no word for the far out there future. There are two concepts of time. There is sasa, which is sort of now and the very near future, now and what's coming right, today in the next couple hours, what I can plan and see. And there's zamani. And zamani is like the vast repository of history of all humanity. It's all things that have ever been. And it's all things that actually will ever be. Because when there's no idea of this super far out future, what there is the present, the now, the very near future. And all of that, as things unfold in the now and the very near future, they moved into the Zamani, into this vast reservoir of all human history. So when we be in this conception and cosmology of time, when we be still, we create time. When we be in the right now and in the next moments, everything we do and be and say in the right now is creating more time that flows into the Zamani. And that means there's no race to do outcomes or outputs or squeeze that juice or lever. Okay. When I think about this and when I heard about these concepts, I couldn't help but think about when I first moved to Portugal. I was sitting where was I? I was sitting in the lobby bar at the Ritz Carlton, Penhalonga, which is a beautiful old Portuguese monastery that was turned into a Ritz Carlton. And was staying there when before actually I moved here. So like maybe in 2022. And I was playing this game with myself to see how in my mind, I was like, I am an exotic international being. I could be from anywhere. No one will guess where I'm from. So I sat in the lobby and I worked on my MacBook, wearing whatever I was wearing, and just was quiet. I made a point to not saying anything to anyone until they spoke to me first, because I wanted to see what language they would speak to me in. 100% of people who spoke to me were like, "Hey girl, how you doing? What can I do?" It's like everybody knew. I wasn't even like British English. I wasn't even like African person who spoke English. I was like American. And a Portuguese friend of mine came in and sat down and I was like, "What is happening? Why is it so obvious?" And she was like, "Well, you're working on a MacBook, which like people don't use Apple products outside the United States. Like that's not a thing," which turns out to be mostly true. Um, She was like, "Yeah, you're working on a MacBook. You're here." So she's like, there are a couple of she's like, "There are a couple, like, African, groups you would kind of expect to be here, but now that I know these groups more, like, I know they tend to be way wealthier, like, way dripping in, jewels and Gucci and whatever." And she said, "The other thing about you, Tara, is you walk American. You walk American." And I was like, "Well, what does that mean?" And she said, "You walk so fast. You everywhere you walk like you're going somewhere, like you have something to do, like you have someplace you gotta be." And I said, "But I do." And you know what she said? "We don't. We don't." And I honestly, at the time, could not even fathom the idea of, like, walking without having someplace to go. Well, how would that work? How could you even be? And I know now that now I create whole days for that exact experience. Whole great chunks of time where we have nothing. We are outside, we're at the beach, we are with the goddess. We have this huge statue to the goddess of the sea in our town. We are at the surf club. We're just on the sand. We're just yes, Ashley, as a New Yorker, nobody walks as fast as a New Yorker. They would instantly be like, "Hello, ma'am. How may we help you?" Now, that's kind of fine because generally here honestly, they like Americans, so there's a little privilege you actually get from that. We call it passport privilege. This is an issue we'll talk about more in the future because it's really an issue when you're part of the African diaspora and you travel. There's a thing where, like, as an African American, you kinda don't have a place that you specifically, like, is your ancestral country, nation, um, outside the United States, and you don't really necessarily feel like you have one inside the United States. But but people generally in the world like Americans. People are generally in the world right now like, what is actually happening? What has happened? In fact, right now, mostly if people comment on my Americanness here, they're generally like, "You really dodged a bullet." "We're so glad you're here. We're so glad you made it out, before whatever's happening." So there's that, but it is really fascinating to observe, to see that, like, people do know the difference between different people observe the differences between being African American and every other kind of way you could be a person of African descent in this world. Um, and it creates a lot of food for thought and food for contemplation. All right. So I think that some of this Western conception of time is very tied to what I think of as a series of supremacies. Okay. And I'm writing and thinking a lot about this right now. We think of supremacies, we think of white supremacy. I think of supremacy, I think of my neurodivergent supremacy. But I also think that Western ways of thinking about time, which are very tyrannical, which very much beget things like actually, I'll get to in a second. I don't know if you've ever heard of like rushing women syndrome is a thing. I had that. That was like my primary syndrome my whole life. I was the valedictorian of my kindergarten class. I started kindergarten when I was 4. Everything had to be early. Everything had to be early and rushed. Does anyone else relate when I say that feeling of like rushing women's syndrome, where you're just rushing all the time and you don't even freaking know why anymore, but it's just the only way you've ever lived? Your nervous system, that can be very traumatic to live in for a lifetime. Many of us start doing that when we are actually very young children, and your nervous system sort of ends up in this threat threat response mode, defense mode, not just for a minute, but for a lifetime. This is the idea of like, I feel like I'm being chased like a lion forever, chronically, right? So the Western conception of time helps contribute to that sense of rushing women syndrome through a series of supremacies. And I want to name them because I'd love you guys to, chime in. Um, there is and like, are there other supremacies or assumptions that are latent in this Western conception of time as like this linear extracted thing? So, supremacy of the future is one that I'm naming in the book. I haven't looked these up. Y'all know I tend to be very, like, hermit, so I'll look them up to see if anyone else has been talking about these, but if you happen to know someone else has, let me know. Supremacy of the future, and I'm naming these because these supremacies are literally trances. They are like low-grade thoughts we've been thinking in the back of our mind, or these are assumptions we've been building our whole lives on that are not true, are not given, they are simply assumptions that come from this Western overseer, internalized, capital R-T conception of time. Supremacy of the future over the present and the past. Supremacy of doing. Supremacy of efforting, you might call it, versus just being or stillness, right? It's not a given that doing is inherently more valuable than being or stillness, but we act like it is. Supremacy of output versus like not, versus receiving, let's say. Supremacy of matter, of material over thought. Stuff equals better than thought. And then supremacy of thought versus soul, spirit, anything else, right? I think all the time about I think all the time about how Albert Einstein and Florence Scovel Shinn were contemporaries, working at the same time in the same subject matter, saying the same thing, but he couched his as science and physics, and she couched hers as spirit and religion, and so hers is seen as like she's this like kooky cult religious spirituality new thought figure from over here, and he's like the world's best known scientist, right? If you want to call someone smart, call him Einstein, right? They were thinking the same thing, supremacy of thought over spirit. And so now what I think is happening is in this season of our world, we're starting to like at least see these supremacies, starting to question these old ways, starting to experiment with creating and manifesting. But these supremacies have been so unexamined that we bring them with us into the equation. So we're still rushing. People out here rushing, trying to manifest stuff. What? Judging ourselves that we're not doing it right, tracking our progress. Well, I've been trying to manifest this for this long. No, no. Really focused on manifesting stuff, manifesting matter. All of the vision boards, all of the conversations about collapsing timelines are about collapsing timeline into a future where you have more stuff. And I'm here to tell you that's doing it wrong. Okay. And so I know many of us have been interested in and studying Inanna's descent. And it is definitely a model for midlife recalibration. It is a model for midlife crisis and how to deal with it and why it's wonderful. It is also a model of deconditioning and detoxing some of these capital induced beliefs from your system. And I think that's really important to do because it's a little bit of a precondition. So this deconditioning, dissolving, burnout, burn down is almost like you can't be in rushing women's syndrome and then also activate your full self from within. Those things don't go together. You can't be in rushing, judging, tracking material, trying to get more stuff by some external, measuring yourself by an external yardstick driven by external urgency or external deadlines, and also be who you came here to be. Because being externally focused and oriented at all will actually dissipate and scatter and distract and disorient your life force energy. You will end up being all spoke of the wheel and no hub. So, external cannot coexist with exalted. Catch that. External cannot coexist with exalted. And if you remember from last time, when I'm talking about exalted, I'm saying that our goal is not your untainted by capital R self. No. Our destination is your exaltation, which is the full, perfect expression of your truest, sacred, biggest self and biggest dreams. Okay. When I say exalted, and when I say perfect, I don't mean like you did it perfectly. Like, no, I mean perfect, like fully self expressed. I mean exalted in the way that we talk about exaltation in astrology to mean, when a planet moves into its home sign, they say it's exalted, and that means it's like it manifests itself to the fullness of its potentials because it feels like an honored guest in its own home. I want you to feel like an honor. I want you, your biggest, fullest, true self, not you out here trying to make up fancy goals that should impress somebody else because you saw Emma Grade say that she does that. Not you trying to shrink something down because your partner is not going to like it. Whatever your true sacred self is, and I'm going to say, forever I've said true sacred self. Really, what it probably means is like true secret self, because most of us don't even know who that big secret sacred self is. Okay. And we can't until we do the deconditioning piece, the unlearning piece that's represented by Inanna's descent. So I've loved for a long time a quote by Carl Jung. Jung said that each human would have 5 big dreams. Every human in their lifetime would have 5 big dreams, and he used that as a term of art with a capital B and a capital D. That each of these 5 big dreams could change this person's life if they could catch the symbolism latent within the dream. Okay. Now he was talking about sleeping dreams, but I think that this also applies to our aspiration, goal type dreams, desire dreams, lifelong dreams. And the deeper I get into the research and the writing of this book, what I know is that Carl Jung was a little bit wrong. It, in the sense that if you are a middle-aged woman, 40 plus, with a specific kind of like neurospiritual apparatus and wiring, some people call it gifted, some people call it divergent, some people call it complex, some people call it ADHD, some people call it whatever. If you are that kind of a woman, not only are you not a human resource, you ain't no cog. You ain't no normie. You're not ever gonna be. Okay, so you can just let that just be. You are I'm just gonna say what I know is true, and you can debate it if you want to. You are a spiritual, divine elite. There is a class of spiritual beings that you are part of, and you may be in disguise from your own self. That's why, like I said, I've been saying your true sacred self when really it probably needed to be your true secret self. And if I just described you, your big dreams are more than just containers of symbols that you can interpret for meaning. They're actually signals. They're actually messages. Okay. Your dreams and desires are actually messages from earlier timeline versions or editions of you, not the future that you got to try to get out here and make happen. From past editions of you that really existed, not just like mythologically, historically. Your big dreams are messages they are containers of information about what it is that you can do and once did. And they are also transmissions of energy that will allow you and empower you to do it from earlier timelines of yourself. Okay, so here's the context. If you've ever heard me teach human design, what I'm about to say. You are a once in a universe event. There ain't never been one like you. There won't ever be another one of you, period. That's why I love human design, because it's so complex. and so intricate. And it has to be if it's going to be a true description of who you are. Okay. Give me one moment. All right. You once in a universe event. This is why human design has all of these gates and lines and aspects that are a little dizzying at first, but it has to be. There are no two identical human design charts. You might find somebody with whom you share profile type and strategy or profile type strategy and authority, but there's like 798 incarnation cross variations. You're not going to find somebody with whom you share all of the elements of your chart. Now, similarly, just like there are an infinite number of unique human designs, there are also an infinite number of timelines of realities that are all present in the field at all at the same time. And you have existed or exist in all of those timelines. You are never done. They are never done. The past is not ever done. Remember Zamani. Remember the sasa, the present right now, is constantly flowing into the past, the Zamani, constantly adding to all that is and all that has been. So each of these timelines contains different editions of who you are. And each timeline of you is like a vessel or a container. Okay. Because in each timeline of you possess a different set of powers, of source codes, of potentials. In each timeline of you have fulfilled a different set of source codes and potentials. All right. So, for example, maybe in a past timeline of you were an oracle in the days of ancient Greece. Okay. But listen, these editions of you aren't just like, cool past lifetimes, right? Think about yourself now in this timeline. Every timeline of you is very affected by the timeline in which you live, for better or for worse. So let's say the right now version of if say you were an oracle back in the day, you may still possess oracle foresight. And somebody on this call does. I guarantee you, somebody on this call has the power to like see things coming before they happen. Probably multiple of you. All right. So you still possess that source code for can see into the future. But in the days of ancient Greece, the oracle was a wealthy woman, a worshipped woman. She had a very specific job, a very specific role. She had temples, she had priestesses, she had servants. Okay. Now, in this timeline, you live in a timeline that worships logical right now thinking. You live in a lifetime in a timeline that says nobody can see into the future. That's crazy, right? But you also, right now, live in a timeline where infant mortality is the lowest it's ever been in human history, where most children grow up to be adults, where science and longevity is off the charts compared to how it was in ancient Greece, where infrastructure and travel and technology will make the need for much of human labor obsolete fast. All right. So what I am suggesting to you is that the combination of all of these additions of you is your exalted self. That's the version of you where you're fulfilling your greatest potentials effortlessly and you are doing the sacred contracts, being and doing and having and creating the things that you are created to do. Okay. So the line that is, let me just check the chat and make sure. Am I okay? Good? Yeah. Okay, great. Yes, Ashley, this is like really, we're really going there. And I'm like, I'm not even, used to be I'd be like, "This is way too much for people." And it is too much for some people, but it's not too much for the right people. So I just trust to know whoever shows up is the right people. So Let's talk about timelines collapsing. Okay. I'm going to pause for 1 second to do a tiny, quick little audio check. All right. Let's talk about timelines collapsing. Hey, Lundy. London. Yeah. Mom? Mom? Yep. Okay. I'm going to call now. I'll be back in just a second. Yep. I'll show you in just a minute. I'm going to take you to it right after this. All right. So, timelines collapsing. Now, have you guys been hearing about this? I see everywhere. I see everywhere I go. It's like how to collapse timelines really freaking fast. Time collapse timelines so fast. Here's how to, and mostly what they're saying is, here's how to get more stuff by time machining yourself into the future. And a lot of what when you really get down to it, a lot of it is still physical efforting. It's act as if. And there's nothing wrong with act as if. There's nothing wrong with an identity upgrade. It is, when I teach 7 alignments and the Tara-Kirk method, your identity does have to get in line with who it is that that's why I'm saying somebody on this call was an oracle. Somebody on this call was the high priestess, maybe me. Somebody on this call is a prophetess. Somebody on this call was one of the OG alchemists. Somebody on this call was queen. Somebody on this. It is helpful for you, but what I'm saying is that these are not just beautiful archetypal patterns of human psyche and behavior that we might study from to learn things. I'm saying, no, you literally were that. And so the lie that is circulating in the culture of New Thought and in the circles where metaphysics and manifestation are being taught is one, that that you can collapse timelines. And two, that if you want to manifest more stuff, more material stuff, because you know that we always start talking about manifestation out here, and before long, it's like make a vision board of the cars you want, the house you want. Okay. If you want to manifest more material stuff, your thoughts create things, your thoughts create your reality. So you must think the thoughts that collapse this timeline into the future one where you can have it or do have it. Okay. Now, let me just say this. Yes, good. I'm glad, yes, because I'm seeing this everywhere. Um, there is nobody on this planet that appeals to more than me, guys. Like, literally, I'm not even out here trying to, like, make fun of these people because it's an appealing idea. It's simply not accurate, is all. It's just not correct, like, metaphysically speaking or, like, quantum physically speaking, because we don't collapse timelines. Timelines do collapse, okay? But that doesn't happen because I thought about it really hard or this is not Back to the Future. Like, it's not something that happens through human effort. You can desire something, upgrade your identity into the identity of the person that has that thing, and then start working your ass off to make that thing happen. And that can be true, and that is creation, but it is not manifestation. And it is not timeline collapsing, and it is absolutely the least as powerful as you are. All of us have done that. I did that my whole life. I did some great manifestations through my physical effort, lever pulling creation. As powerful as you are, it's absolutely the least powerful way to create. Okay. And because it's what I'm trying to convey is that because of these latent trances and assumptions, these supremacies, we're all out here trying to collapse timelines into the future. But the plot twist on us, because the far out future doesn't exist. And you don't have to take it from the Swahili language. I think this is what all Buddhism teaches. This is what every mindfulness technology is trying to tell you, to be present, because every Esther Hicks video All them people are saying to you to be here now because the far out future doesn't exist. It's never going to be the future. It's always just going to become a now. So all there is this shimmering, radiant, electric field of infinite potentials right here and now in front of us that as we move through them, we can move some of these shimmering potentials into what I call tangible consensus reality, things that you and me, other people can see and touch and taste and smell. As we turn things into reality, they flow and they shift into what we've been calling the past, but I want us to start calling them Zamani because it's this beautiful field of all that has been. Okay? So again, we don't collapse timelines, but timelines do collapse, and we do play a role in the process, usually in two ways. You can prevent them from collapsing, which you probably do every day without knowing you're doing it, and you can participate in them collapsing, which we also do every day. And we probably want to do, but we're almost certainly all going about it the wrong way. Okay. So what I'm hoping to do today is to interrupt that pattern of unconsciously participating in or preventing timelines from collapsing. And what I want you to know is that there is a sequence of events that must take place for timelines to collapse in a way that you find exhilarating and expansive to you. Okay. You can call it a manifestation sequence, but I tend to call it an activation sequence. And I want to really name that what we're doing here, we are playing a creation game, but this is not just about manifesting stuff. When you learn this activation sequence that we're going to talk about now, it will feel like they talk about in the sacred books, right? Where they say, "Open the windows of heaven, pour out a blessing. Blessings will flow to you with overflow. You won't be able to contain it. Everybody around you gonna get," you know what they say in all the gospel songs, right? It will feel like that, but that's not why we're doing it, okay? You desire what you desire because another timeline of you already had that, was that, did that. It is encoded. You ever hear them talk about like ordinance? Like the sand and the sea have a genetic ordinance. The sand knows where it stops and where the sea begins. They just know what to do. You have a spiritual ordinance. You have an encoding that involves the being and doing and having and experiencing and creating of certain things. And that's why you desire what you desire, even when it feels really far out, right? If you've ever listened to Esther Hicks, you always hear her say, when you know what you don't want, you know what you do want. Well, I think so many women in this season right now are saying that I'm not sure what I want, right? But I think that technology, innovation, futurism is all of this creates desire. Our ability to see what is happening in other places in the world, which is not a power that ever humans have possessed before now. All of this helps clarify desire. Also, our awareness of illness and the unwanted of humanity and patriarchy and manosphere and all of that. Every time we see these things, it begins to shape and crystallize and clarify what we do want. But I'm here to tell you that also your desires are messages from past you. It's not just stuff you want. Often it's something that you is in your wired into your spiritual ordinance to be, to have, or create. And that's why you want it. Okay. So I'm saying we don't need to be out here trying to collapse timelines into the future. What we need to do is reach into the past and allow that to supercharge our imagination, our dreams, our desires, so that not just manifestation technologies and thoughts create reality. We're not just out here trying to do that. It's like we need to study actual history and mythology and futurism. All of those technologies are part of our manifestation of our big, true, sacred, secret selves. Okay. So this is a little bit of like a call to action. I want us to, I think it's, I love to be wealthy. I love prosperity. I love jewels. I love houses. I love all of these things. Okay. But trying to manifest money and stuff so you can check those boxes off is a way smaller game than the game you really came here to play. I promise you. And I promise if you play your real right big game, all of that rest of that flows to you too. Your desires are not just messages from other timelines of you. They carry codes that you need to access those powers within you right now. And you have access to them right now. Okay. To understand that, you have to understand it's like the second law of thermodynamics, I think. Maybe I used to teach this all the time, which I don't anymore. But I think the second law is the one that's like the universe is always expanding and improving. Okay. Well, you are too. But to understand that, you have to understand that you are eternal. Okay. And so that vast power that you may have had in the past is a container of a code. This lifetime timeline of you is also in expansion. You just need to reach back and grab that code. Okay. And when I was thinking about this, somehow I came across, I've never really known what this was. I've heard the word Sankofa before. Do you guys know this word? Sankofa. It's a word from the Akan people and language of Ghana. Um, Sankofa, and it's a bird. If you Google it right now, I don't know how to share screen here, so I'm not going to do it because I don't want to tempt the. Oh, maybe I can. The Sankofa bird. Okay, let's see if it'll let me do it. Sankofa bird it's like a symbolic representation of this exact principle from the Akan nation, which is part of Ghana. Okay. Do you see what this bird is doing? The bird is flying in the direction of the future with his head turned back toward the past, right? And he's like grabbing a gem from the past to bring with him into the future. All right. That's the wisdom is move forward, sure. But you need to like be looking in the past. And that is a very underappreciated, radically underestimated power source for those of us who find ourselves with these dreams and desires where we're just like, why do I want that? It feels so big. It feels too massive. I don't even know if I like want that. It's so big, right? If you had access to all of the powers and codes that you've possessed across all the timelines of you, you wouldn't just be able to like achieve your goals. You would possess the power to create life, to command heavens, to command, Inanna was not the queen of heaven. She was the queen of heaven, the earth, and the underworld. Okay. You would have these massive powers. And what I want you to know is that I love mythology because I think it's very powerful and it contains codes for us too. But there was a lineage of women who were divine or spiritual elites in real life history, actual historical figures. And just like you, nothing about those women was typical. Okay. So when I say reach into the past and bring the codes that you find into now, you may start to be attracted to specific figures in history. And I want you to know that that's not coincidence. That's not coincidence. When I started to research the, mythological or like deity figure Inanna, very rapidly I came into contact with her high priestess and Hedwana, who was a real human woman who was the first known writer in human history. Okay. She was prolific and she was no joke because she wasn't just a high priestess. She was effective. Actually, we'll talk about her a little more in a minute. She was essentially the queen of her region. She ruled over a temple city or a temple region that was almost thought of as like an embassy. Like um, it was a sovereign, sacred, political temple territory. And within that territory, there was like great prosperity because of the industry and innovation an agricultural conglomerate that was located within this territory. There was an entire class and lineage of other priestesses who ran and managed this. There was, there was a whole area that was for sanctuary and worship. There was a whole area of private residences. There was this conglomerate of businesses. And the high priestess was responsible, sure, for like rituals and praise to the goddess, but also for like audits and strategies and briefing and managing scribes and legal dispute resolution and like astronomical observation and imperial politics, right? And letter writing. And then she did her like praise to the goddess creative writing that we still have all these thousands of years later at night. Okay. So I know this is why sometimes the things you want seem so wild, like so wild, because they're literally not just from your this lifetime. That's why I'm like, all of this, people like you and me out here fixating on optimizing yourself or losing 20 pounds or making more money or like hitting a goal. It's like cool, but it's literally so far below your spiritual pay grade. That's why part of your inner being is just like, "Girl, what we even doing?" This is, like, so small for you, okay? Like, what I'm asking you to do in your, this activation sequence, which I'll be quick. The activation sequence is, like, not 3 steps, it's 4. Just take this note. Take this note. It's called the Axiom of Maria. The Axiom of Maria, named after Maria Prophetessa, who was another one of these real, actual figures. She was the first true alchemist of the Western world. If you cook and you ever have created a bain marie, like the warm water bath that you cook in, it's kind of like akin to sous vide, but not exactly a bain marie. She was the inventor of the bain marie. That's why it's called Marie. And ain't nobody heard of her either. All right. So Maria Prophetessa had a 4-part alchemical sequence that is parallel very much to the sequence we need to go through to stop just trying to manifest little stuff and start manifesting the full identity of who we really are. So the first step is fire, and that's like your crisis, your desire, right? The burnout that burns off the mask. Then there's a stage that's like disintegration. This is a stage that's inspired by Inanna's descent, right? This is where you're shedding your personas and defense mechanisms and old threat responses and all that overworking and rushing and tracking and judging and all of that mess. All those divided self patterns of like smiling on the outside, crying on the inside, right? Or Doug syndrome, just like working your ass off, paddling under the surface, but trying to look cool and calm on the no. Cease participation. Okay. Stage 3 is activation. And this, in my method, is really where you begin. You just got to learn who you really are under all that. And you can't really learn it until some of the trauma is integrated and healed, and some of the dissolutions begin to die. Some of the mask begins to burn off. Um, we do this with human design. We begin to learn who we really are. We do this by unsilencing ourselves and starting to really lean into like, what is it that I really want? Right. And this is the beginning of us becoming activated from within. Because when you're activated from that place, you can actually do all kinds of stuff you couldn't have done under your own physical effort. Right? And then after activation step is exaltation. And this is what I'm talking about when I say perfect self expression, perfect just meaning full. This is where timelines collapse and you're no longer even playing the unworthiness game. It's like you kind of transcended, you jumped into a new game, right? This is where you learn that you can access the power which formed all worlds, which is funny because, like at my house, I have to really be careful um, because we both are out here with these powers. And if you don't know how to use them, it can actually be kind of a mess. Like we have had a really, in tropical human design, I'm a 3-5 and my daughter is 2. And I've had, if you've known me for long, I've had all kinds of very severe accidents, very severe illnesses. We've had a number of experiences in our world that I'm certain are because we possess this power and we're not fully wielding it with skill. All right. But you learn, but you learn. That's why you just kind of have to have God as training school. That's kind of why I'm like, I'm going to roll out a bunch of offers and experiences for the summer under this umbrella of prolific paid priestess, because the real OG priestesses were prolific creators and they were very wealthy women, and it was all part of their spiritual ordinance with being priestess. All right. And there's a piece where you can't keep shrinking down what you want and do and be who you came here to be. That's why the things you want seem so crazy. I was in the sea. Let's see. I was in the sea on the Scorpio full moon. Yeah, maybe 6 weeks ago ish. And I was sitting in the sea and I was like, there's two, I'm in hotel creation mode. There are two hotels, very iconic properties, like at each end of the point of the little crescent I was in. And I was just sitting in the sea, just like calling them unto me, these two beautiful buildings. And then, like, I went up and sat next to the goddess statue. And I was just like, you know what? Why do I want these things? Like, I have a hotel project I'm starting right now. And I have writing projects. I have businesses. I have children. I have a lot happening. I was like, why do I even want these buildings? If this is just I literally said in a prayer, if this is just me being acquisitive because I've been conditioned to be acquisitive, I don't take that desire from me. I don't even need to have that. Okay. And immediately what came through was like, your job is to gain territory for the kingdom, for the matriarchy. This is why you're called to have these things. And I was like, oh, in that case, I'm good at real estate. I am good at playing creation games. I will absolutely play them for the benefit of the queendom. You know what I'm saying? And so very soon after that, I started to learn about the high priestess in Hedwana's like territory called the Gipar, Gipar. And I started to have this dawning that deep soul and massive wealth are contradictory kind of in this timeline, but they were certainly not in history at all. All right. So, yes, if you feel like you have a big calling, that calling is not just from something out there calling you, it is from you, from other editions of you. Okay. And as you know, all human and universal energies move in waves. The timeline collapse into your secret, sacred past self in the form of your big desires and dreams is a way that you may have been fighting up to now. And I'm inviting you to learn how to surf that wave, how to reach back and grab, snatch back the sets of potentials and powers and blueprints and universal intelligence and creative power that you had in earlier versions of yourself. Okay, so we'll talk much more about that in the future. Um, I just want to share this one quote from Florence Scovel Shinn that I love, where she says, oh, she says, there's a place that's not the whole quote. Hang on, sorry. Okay. There's a place that you are to fill and no one else can fill. Something you are to do which no one else can do. It usually flashes across the unconscious as an unattainable ideal, something that's too good to be true. So there's a dream or desire that's been in here that only you can do. It's yours. And it usually will flash across your unconscious as this way too big, too good to be true kind of thing. I'm here to say that that desire, that dream is a calling, a message from the big secret you. And that you have a big self. I'm in this book writing program called the Novelry. It's very, very good. And in it, they encourage you to decide what genre you're writing and then pick a hero book. Like pick a book from even an old book that's like kind of a hero model of the form of the type. I think in the same way, you have a heroine self who was an actual historical, it could have been mythical because myth and history are very, I mean, that's what the whole thing about the Bible and the sacred texts of these religions are, right? It's like no one really knows where the history ended and the myth began, right? So, like, you have a heroine self that I would call your big self. Your big self is not about, I got to hit these goals. It's an actual figure that captivates you. And I think they captivate you not because it's just like a hobby or a passing interest, but because there's a past version of you there that contains codes. So I want you to make like the Sankofa bird, fly into your sasa, looking into the zamani, bringing the gems from the samani into the sasa, and then, you know, creating more time as you go. All right. Now, let's shift into part two, which is new moon intention setting. Today is a new moon in Gemini. If you have your copy of Power Wish, pop it open. Um, Gemini, we know and talk about a lot as an energy or sign of writing and self expression and communication. But in the Power Wish, I love that she talks about a lot of other concepts than that. Okay. So she says, with a Gemini Power Wish, you ride the wave of opportunity with the new moon. And I'm just going to read what she has under Gemini Power Wishes in the book, The Power Wish. Good fortune is all about timing. No matter how talented you are or how hard you work, if your timing isn't right, you won't get results and success becomes difficult. Whether your wish comes true also depends on timing. Isn't that wild that we were talking about? I haven't actually read this yet. So, not this year. So, we've just been talking about timing. The zodiac sign that rules the timing of all things is Gemini. If you think you always have terrible timing, you should make good use of Gemini power wishes. Good timing is all about receiving the right information at the right time. If you've been searching for months and still can't find the connection or the information you need, it's highly likely that you lack the energy of Gemini. Use Gemini power wishes to attract the best information. We need to be fast on our feet in order to nimbly ride one wave of opportunity after another. You don't need hard work to get luck on your side. Once you use Gemini power wishes to get yourself in the right place at the right time, luck will naturally find you. Let's see. Gemini, along with Aquarius, has become increasingly important in recent years because Gemini rules information. In our information age, we're constantly exchanging emails in both our professional and personal lives. There are more people who own a smartphone than not. Gemini happens to be the sign that governs everything pertaining to information and transmission. Words and communication are also ruled by Gemini. It's not hard to see how significant a sign it is. Gemini represents curiosity and variety. It's great at developing multiple things simultaneously. So if you have a long list of things you want to manifest, Gemini power wishes are sure to be of great help. If what you are longing for is a stimulating life full of changes, entrust it to a Gemini power wish. And there's my homegirl with the most, Jennifer Davis Flynn, who just had an amazing milestone birthday. She's a Gemini. Also, my father is a Gemini and my brother is Gemini. My brother's birthday is tomorrow. My father's birthday was a little bit ago. So, explaining why I vowed early in life never to marry or date Geminis, but I got a lot of Gemini friends. Gemini new moon power wish. Okay, a Gemini new moon helps you communicate clearly and with precision. That's you, Jen. Receive the perfect information at the perfect time, work and succeed in multiple fields simultaneously, enjoy unforced conversations no matter whom you are with, expand possibilities by studying what interests you, adapt to a new environment, live an active life with ease, profit from a second source of income, gain worldly wisdom, and Gemini moon, new moon helps you with anything related to the hands, arms, lungs, and respiratory system. So, to help you find clues, if you're not sure what these are all clues for the intentions you should be setting right now. Okay. Um, if you're not sure what intentions you want to set right now, here are some questions to ask yourself. What would you like to learn right now? What are you interested in but haven't pursued? What is on your bucket list? And y'all know I'm not really big on bucket lists because I'm like, don't make a list of stuff you want to do and then just die. Just do the stuff you want to do all the time. What can you teach others? If you could obtain two things at once, what would they be? And then she gives three power wish examples that are likely to come true with the Gemini new moon. One, I intend to. So remember last time we were in a full moon, and in a full moon in the power wish method, you state your intention as a thing that already happened, and then you say thank you and explain how you feel. This already happened. I feel so A-listy. Thank you. Okay, with the new moon wishes, you actually say I intend to because the new moon is like dark, blank slate, it's a place for sowing the seed, planting seeds. Okay. I intend to communicate joyfully and skillfully with everyone and cultivate harmonious relationships. I intend to always receive the exact information I need at the perfect time. I intend to easily balance my work and personal lives, simultaneously enjoying happiness in both areas. So, some of the more specific ones she gives are like, I intend for my friendship with Sam to soon blossom into a romantic relationship. I intend to debut as a screenwriter before the end of the year and become highly sought after as quickly as possible. I intend to have a second job in the art world and bring in just as much income as my primary job. I intend to travel every 2 months, broadening my horizons and experiences. I like this one. I intend to understand the importance of words, making a conscious effort to use only words that are beautiful and good. I intend to become healthier by drinking a glass of water with lemon juice every morning. I intend to ignore gossip and listen only to positive news. I intend to take action enthusiastically instead of suppressing my curiosity to see and learn. And then, if you'll remember, uh, and really, guys, this book is such a great reference, just like it's so grounding. I think this is one reason I was diagnosed with ADHD so late in life. Is that very early in my life, I discovered the grounding regulating actually power because my nervous system was a mess actually coming out of my childhood defense mode forever. I discovered the grounding power of rituals, and I have rituals I do multiple times a day. I have rituals I do every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year, and every 3 years even. And then actually even on milestone birthdays, kinda every 5 and 10 years, I have rituals for that. And then I have and then the moon rituals are every 2 weeks because that's just the moon, right? So, it's very grounding to know every 2 weeks you get to press this reboot, press this reset, even if it's just in your mind. Right? You don't have to believe in anything out there. It's really grounding for you to have a time set every 2 weeks where you sit down, you gather yourself, and you set a powerful intention for your next couple of weeks, right? If you did nothing else but just write a list of stuff you want, that would actually probably work too, right? It's like I said, I have to be really careful with our powers and our words in this house. I tell London all the time, you, by virtue, the things you think and the things you say are more likely to happen because you thought and said them. That is truth. That is fact. So it's really helpful to have these moments in time where instead of you spiraling through the list in your mind, which is very common for us, the way we're wired, you actually sit down. And it's nice to have protocols and methods for these things. So you're not just all here doing stuff. So that's what the power wish is. It doesn't have to be any spookier than than that. On the new moon, okay, she invites you to use anchoring statements and anchoring formats for your intentions. So on the new moon, the anchoring statement is this: I am certain that the wish I'm making is perfectly aligned with the will of the universe, and that it is the highest and best way to bring love and prosperity into the world. Through the wish I'm making, I intend for my love and power to quickly reach all beings everywhere. And then you write your intention. Like, I'll give her example. Currently, I'm planning on developing a new product. I intend to find the best manufacturer to help me bring it to life and to create a product filled with the vibration of love. Furthermore, I intend for love to reach all those who receive my product, blessing them and their families with happiness. All right. So that's a couple of good intentions. So I invite you to take this moment right now. Don't say you're going to do it later. Just take I I always say, "I'm gonna take 10 minutes and set my intentions right now." And 45 minutes later, um, but it's such a beautiful ritual, and it's so good. If you especially if you identify as someone who is in burnout or has been in burnout and you're neurodivergent burnout ain't nothing nice, and it's not like regular people burnout. It's it is it's it's the fire that burns the mask off. And the only way you can get out of it is to start to indulge your obsessions and your passions and your hyper focus areas. You can't get out of it just by resting. You have to start giving time to yourself, giving energy to yourself and to your own dreams and desires, to your own, past timeline you. It's the only way, but it does really work. So give yourself a little time. Write an anchoring statement, start to set some intentions. I usually set intentions in every area of my life, but I will sort of mold the clay of how they are worded to the subjects um, that are supercharged by that particular lunation or sign. And then, I'll see you in a couple weeks. I'll see you in a couple weeks on the full moon. I'll probably see some of you before that. Like I said, I'm going to roll out a series of I have a master class coming up called The Way of the no. I have a master class coming up that's just a prolific paid priestess master class. I have a live Substack building installation, like launch experience, 3-day thing called The Way of the Prolific Paid Priestess, where I'm not just showing you like how to build a Substack, I'm actually showing you what the rest of that business can look like and how you can do it in a way, how you can build it and run it in a way that you delight in it, even with a neurocomplex brain. And then I have a 3-month build process for those who want to build that whole business out. Um, that's also branded Prolific Paid Priestess. And then, and always what I have, if you want to get the best of the first and the best of everything, is Substack. It's the Substack studio on School. The people who are in that actually are going to get a bunch of the Prolific Paid Priestess stuff without having to pay for it. They're not having to pay anything extra for it. So, like, let's see, who is that on here? That's Jennifer is in that group. Jennifer is in the premium, so you get like extra stuff. Joy is in that group. I'm going to drop the link here because, again, the people who are in this group at either level are getting first access to a lot of stuff. The people who are in the group at the highest level even are getting my Business for Your Brain software, my Self-Centered Business OS. There's just like they're getting live experiences that other people don't get. They're getting access to the $3,000 3-month build without paying anything else. So if you want all of that stuff, definitely get into these groups and start right now today. You join that group and you can start right now today the 7-day challenge to launch your own bold, beautiful Substack and build it right the first time and start getting paid right now, not someday when you get 1 million followers. And then we're starting all kinds of other things, growth challenges. Joy, you should already be in it. Or look for an invitation. So that's it. Join me. I love y'all. Bring your friends. Actually, that group, the Substack Studio group, where I dropped the link, if you use your referral link and bring friends, I think you get like 40% of whatever your friends invest in being in the group the whole time you're in the group. So join me. I love it. If you have a Substack already, you don't have to join it to start your Substack. Join it to grow your Substack. Join it to build the Substack success habits. Join to build your business. Join to build out your body of work. It's much more than just starting. I love you guys. I'm going to go take London to Art Club. They are doing an exhibition of their work today. All right. I'll see you guys soon.